let my teenage daughter stay at my sister's place just for a bit while she's in school, because the school that she chose to go to is great for her because she wants to study art. However, the problem is, she came running home in the middle of the night, drenched in rain, begging to let her stay back at her house, which is her original home. But let me tell you exactly what went wrong, and this one is messed up. I don't know how to help my daughter. I think that she and her cousin had an argument, and since she's currently living with her aunt, which, by the way, is my sister, I don't know how I can help mitigate the situation at all. She called me a few nights ago and just broke down sobbing over the phone and would not explain what happened. I've not been able to get her to talk about it since, and I don't know, I just need some advice from other moms or dads who have teenage daughters living outside of the home, or how to best support her. Background, I'm 41 female and my ex-husband is 42. You see, Bruce got divorced a couple years ago. For all intents and purposes, it was an amicable separation. We had a pretty good prenup in place already, and we're both on the same page on making the whole situation as painless as possible for our daughter, Amy, who, by the way, is 14. Both of us have always been close to our daughter, and the only reason we stayed together as long as we did was for her. However, we eventually came to the realization that the best home we could provide for Amy was a happy one. And if that meant having 2 happy homes instead of 1 miserable one, it was what was the best. We made sure to do everything we could to support her through it. We kept her in the same school. We made sure that she had everything she needed at both of our houses so she never felt like she didn't have a real home. And we had her in counseling from day one. We tried to disrupt her life as little as possible, given the fact that we're changing such a big aspect of it already. To the best of my knowledge, our efforts had their intended impact. Life stayed largely the same for her. She saw us both of very equal amounts. And we just did our best to have bi-weekly dinners together so that she could see that she was not losing her family unit. Things were actually going well for a couple of years. Amy continued to do well in school, and though socially she's always been a little reserved, this wasn't something that cropped out after the divorce. She'd always leaned more towards the shy and calm side of things. She does have friends, and she still behaved like a normal little girl, so it was never a cause for concern. She just preferred the company of a good book sometimes instead of a loud party. Seeing as I've been there, too, at the same age as her, I wasn't too worried about it. Well, however, things changed when she started high school last fall, guys. Oh boy. Well, she was so excited about starting high school and joining the debate team. She wanted to be a lawyer for as long as I can remember. And her uncle told her that the debate is a great way just to get a taste of it early on. So her middle school did not have a debate team, but the local high school does, and so she's been looking forward to joining for a while. She signed up the first weekend that clubs and activities started up again, and she's raved about their first meeting for the entirety of our dinner with her father. I was so happy that she was having fun because I know how stressful high school can be, especially someone on the shyer side like Amy. Things continued to go well for a few weeks. Then Amy started having less and less to say about school. She seemed a lot less energetic, and after a couple of weeks of her withdrawn attitude that she excused as just being, quote, tired, I managed to get some information out of her. She was being picked on by a few girls in the grades above her because she defended one of her fellow debate team members when they were picking on him. She said it had started out not so bad, but every few days they would escalate a little more. It started with these side comments in the hall, then bumping into her while she was walking to class, and then knocking over her lunch tray even. Obviously, her father and I immediately spoke to the school about it. They told us that they would keep an eye on the situation and make sure that it did not escalate. But they couldn't do anything until they were sure that anything was actually even happening. I was furious, considering I believed my daughter 100%, but I relented. Amy did not want me escalating it yet, and said that she would tell me if anything got worse. Bruce and I made sure to be more vigilant about it too, and we made sure that she knew that she was not in any trouble at all, that we were not disappointed in her, and that we would not go out of our way to embarrass her at school. We just wanted what was best for her. Unfortunately, the school did not seem to share that same sentiment. The bullying did escalate to the point that Amy was locked in the bathroom for 3 hours, and we only found out when the school called to report her. Both Bruce and I went over to the school immediately, thinking our daughter was actually missing. But by the end, in time we arrived, another student had found her. So, she was in the office waiting for us, and the school was obviously apologizing for worrying us sick. Well, but when we asked what they were going to do about it, they told us that nobody had seen the incident at all, so they can't do anything. There was no proof of who did it, and they could not just trust Amy's word. At that point, we realized that we had 2 options. First, we could fight this against our daughter's wishes and maybe achieve some bit of justice. Second, we could remove our daughter from the environment and place her somewhere that she could thrive, in a school that actually cared about her. We decided to go somewhere down the middle, and we removed Amy from the school. But we also escalated the situation to the school board. Seeing as we had a multiple incident report filled at the school with no action taken to investigate or solve anything, my brother-in-law assisted in putting together a case for us, and he would have referred us to a more specialized attorney had the case needed to be escalated, but we fortunately managed to settle the matter without any official legal action taken. Still, Amy was left in need of a new school. Ensuring that she had a good experience the second time around was the utmost priority. Bruce and I looked into several schools in the area, but my brother-in-law William, the lawyer, ended up suggesting a school in his area with an amazing debate program and a high rate of alumni accepted into law school. We took a tour of the school and Amy absolutely adored it. Despite the distance from both mine and Bruce's house, we decided to go ahead and enroll her after a lot of discussion. Considering the commute would be a little unreasonable for her to make every morning, my sister Ava and William offered to put Amy up at their place. So, we went to help her move into the guest room, and nearly a month ago now, and as hard as it was to go home without her, I honestly believe that having the stability of coming home to the same house every day would do wonders for her. You know what, that held true for the first couple of weeks. Our nightly calls were full of stories of her time at school, and, well, the new friends that she's made and the clubs that she was considering joining. Then, just like at her first school, she started to get quiet again. It was harder to notice this time since I did not see her every day, and only had a short phone call to go off of, but over the course of a week her calls got short, citing homework and tiredness before stopping altogether for 3 days. She still responded to my text and told me that her period was just making her more tired than usual. So she was falling asleep right after homework, and you know what, guys? I was a bit worried, obviously, and offered to let her take a few days off and come back home, but she said that she had a big project that she could not skip on. I was still worried, obviously, and asked my sister to check in on her, and Ava reported back the same findings. Amy said that she was fine, just a bit tired and suffering cramps. She's always had a couple of days of cramping during her cycle, which we have taken her to the doctor for, so it was completely believable. However, my main cause for concern is that 3 nights ago Amy called. I answered immediately, and the first words out of my mouth were to ask how she was doing and if she was okay. I heard her take a shaky breath and try to say something, but instead of words she just broke down, absolutely sobbing. I asked what was wrong, but she could not manage to get any words out. I decided to forgo an explanation for the time being and just comfort my crying daughter. She cried for a while, but finally started calming down, and I could hear her falling asleep. I knew that I needed to go to her, but after she fell asleep, I hung up. I called Bruce, and he suggested heading over first thing in the morning instead, since it was a weekend. Considering Amy usually is asleep in on the weekend, I'd be able to talk to Ava and William about anything that's happened. Bruce and my first thought was that she was being picked on at school again, seeing as the pattern of behavior was very similar to what had happened at her old school. So when I finally arrived at Ava's house, I was shocked to see that Elijah, my nephew, was there too. He'd spent the last few years studying abroad, and I really had not seen him since he was quite young, considering he'd attended a boarding school prior to that. Apparently, He had arrived a couple weeks prior and had requested some time to settle in before informing the family. I was a bit shocked and even surprised that Amy had not mentioned it either, but I figured that she had other things on her mind by the time he arrived. He was just the same as I remembered him, well-spoken and charming, and he joined his parents and me in the sitting room, where I asked about Amy. He was the first to tell me that she's been a little stressed about some school project that was due. Something about her group mates not pulling their own weight, and it seemed to be really down about it. He said that he'd given her some advice on how to deal with it since he knew how group projects could be, but she'd been so determined to handle it by herself. Apparently, they've gotten into a bit of an argument, but they sorted it out last night. Ava and William did not object to any of this, and Ava said that she's been seeing Amy studying more often recently, too. Amy woke up a little later and seemed shocked to see me downstairs. I asked her how she was doing and took her aside to talk to her, but she seemed to have done a complete 180 from the night before. She said she was just stressed about school and it all bubbled over last night. Okay. She said that she's taking it out on Elijah, but they'd sorted everything out after we spoke. After having some breakfast together, she assured me that she was fine and just walked me to the door. After saying goodbye to everyone, I asked her one last time if she was truly all right, and she said that everything was going good. My hesitation came from the fact that before she answered me, she looked at Elijah. I spoken to her twice since my visit, and she seems to have gone back to her usual self, but I can't help but be a little bit worried. Every time I ask about Elijah, she gives a short answer before changing the subject. I think that their argument may have been a little worse than either of them is letting on, but Amy does not want to upset anyone by talking about it. And guys, I'm just posting this here in straight up hopes of getting some advice on how to deal with this entire situation. Should I just go ahead and take her word for it? I'm a concerned mom. I'll go ahead and give you guys an update in just a little bit. Update number 1. I've never actually intended to post anything more after my initial post. I just wanted some advice, which I did receive, both positive and less so. Given recent developments, however, I find myself in need of even more advice, right? I'll start off with a few clarifications concerning my original post. Firstly, why did we pick a school far enough away to warrant Amy having to move out of her home? The school that she's attending now was not mine or Bruce's first choice. Trust me. We would have made preferred to have our daughter closer. Living with the both of us, however, given the fact that she was being pulled out of high school for what could have developed into quite a traumatic experience, we wanted her to feel as though she had some control, you know? Well, as such, when she really wanted to tour the school that William suggested, we did. She fell in love with it immediately. For what it's worth, it's really a good school if you ask me. That said, her school of choice is not the subject of discussion here. Next, the main thing I received questions on was Elijah, to provide a few more details if I could. So, initially, Elijah is Ava and William's son. He's about 24 years of age, to my knowledge, and has spent the last few years studying abroad. It's true that I did not know that he was back in the States, but I don't find that particularly alarming, as his coming and goings have never really been a subject of discussion in the family. He's a good kid, and from what I know, though, I will admit that I don't really know him all that well. All of that said, I'll move on to the real purpose of this updated post. A few days ago, Amy came home. This would not have been alarming had I known that she was coming home, and had it not been midnight, and had it not been absolutely pouring rain. Fortunately, I was awake when I heard the doorbell ring, and I found my daughter standing soaking wet on my porch. I ushered her in immediately and got her dried off. But all I could get out of her was that she took an Uber because she wanted to come home. I just asked multiple times if anything happened, what was wrong, and any question I could think of, but she would not say anything more. So I call up Ava immediately, but I did not get an answer. So I tried William, who did not answer either. I asked Amy if she knew why I could not reach them, and she told me that William was flying out for a business trip and was probably already on the phone. And Ava had gone to drop him off, you know, so she likely just had not checked her phone yet. Even getting that much information out of her was a struggle, and she seemed to be dedicated to keeping silent. Ava did not call me back at any point the whole weekend, and William, who's typically more reliable of the two, remained uncontactable. Without being able to reach either my sister or her husband, I decided to contact the school. They were extremely cooperative, and I spoke to the principal, who then put me in touch with the guidance counselor, but both of them did not know about anything going on at the school that could explain Amy's behavior. However, the guidance counselor told me that she had also noticed a decline in Amy's mood. She said that she had been keeping an eye on it, seeing as new students sometimes have a hard time getting used to the school, but that everything seemed fine. Amy had many friends made, and she was doing well in all her classes even, and she was participating in more than just the debate team. She told me that she was not suggesting anything, but that something could be bothering Amy at home, since her time at school was absolutely fine. It had not even occurred to me that the problem could stem from home. Bruce and I will be discussing this at length when he comes to pick her up later today, and I hope we're able to get through to her and understand what's going on. Update number 2. I'm currently sitting in the guest bedroom of my cousin's home trying to calm down. I don't want to bother Bruce with this while he's handling an emergency with his family, and I can't talk to any of my family about this right now, considering they've all just watched it. Anyways, to rewind a little bit, it's just been over 3 days since my last post, guys. And it's currently Bruce's custody time, but he got a call just a few hours ago that his cousin got into an accident. Yep. So Amy's currently with me, and unfortunately by the time he called, I was already at my own cousin's place for her 15th birthday party. I offered to go home, but both he and Amy figured that the party and the company would be good distraction for her. So she joined me here for just a little bit ago, and very quickly whisked off by her cousin to go and play in the pool. She does look a heck of a lot better, guys, and she did this weekend. Not 100% better, I'd say, but better. She's still out there in the pool with them, and I could see them laughing and just playing around with each other. When I arrived, my sister, she was not there. My cousin told me that Ava was not sure if she'd be able to make it work, and secretly I was quite glad. I still had not processed what it could mean for Amy's breakdown to have been caused by something in Ava's home. I still haven't even now. However, a while after the kids headed back to the pool, I was in the kitchen with a few of my cousins and Ava arrived. Everybody greeted her like normal and moved back to the sitting room. With our drinks, well, I just excused myself to the washroom to collect myself. I didn't know what to say to her at all, and when I came back to the sitting room, they were talking about Elijah being home. And my cousin asked how Amy had fared living with someone else. Ava laughed and said that I had clearly spoiled my daughter because Amy was too much of an only child to survive at her place like Elijah. Well, that's what got to me. I completely lost my cool. I launched into a tirade at her audacity to joke about Amy's behavior when she was the one to cause her to have complete emotional breakdowns. Ava acted as though she had no idea what I was on about, saying that we'd already spoken about Amy's breakdown the day that I came over, and that I was the one who'd called Amy home in the first place. I told her that I'd done no such thing. What kind of mother would make their teenage daughter find her own way home at midnight in the pouring rain? I asked Ava why she did not bother to call me and confirm any of this, and all she had to say was that she had meant to, but it must have slipped her mind while rushing to get William to the airport. As for why she did not answer any of my calls after, she said that she'd dropped her phone and it wasn't working right now. So I pressed on, saying that the school had told me Amy's mood was being caused by nothing there, and it had to be something at home. Ava's home. She asked what I was suggesting, and I told her she knew full well what I was suggesting, and she asked if I was accusing her of abusing Amy. Well, you know what? I didn't deny it. I told her if I found out that she even laid a hair of harm on my daughter's hair, I would sue her to the highest hell. At that point, my cousin managed to intervene and separate us, and Elijah just took his mother's side, which brings us to the present point. I had a couple of glasses of wine earlier, so I'm stuck in the bedroom until I either calm down or sober up. I'm pretty sure Ava already left, and the only comfort I have is that Amy and the other kids were being loud enough that they did not hear a word that we even said. Update number 3. Writing this now, I'm grateful that I decided against using anyone's real name and left out the majority of identifying information. I did not expect to post 2 updates on the same day, but this matter has gotten so much more serious than I initially thought it would. I really needed some advice from people who have dealt with similar situations or work with those who have. I'm currently sitting in my own home, waiting for Bruce to get here so that we can discuss everything that's happened properly. Amy's upstairs taking a shower, and I know that it's unlikely that anyone's going to read this and respond before Bruce gets here, but I just needed to organize my thoughts, and this has been really helping. Shortly after my previous update, I decided against rejoining the party in any capacity and had sobered up enough to make the drive home. I'd only had a couple of glasses of wine before Amy even arrived, so I was confident enough to drive. I said my goodbyes to my family and headed back to the pool, but I didn't see her. My niece told me that Amy had gone into the pool house to use the bathroom. Once inside, I could hear a raised voice. I realized it was coming from the bathroom where Amy was supposed to be, and it was Elijah's voice that was raised. My first instinct was to rip the door open and get my daughter out of there, but Ava's words were fresh in my mind from the argument. She asked if I was really going to take the word of a school counselor over my own sister. I knew that if I intervened now, Elijah would be free to spin the story however he wanted with no witnesses. So I pulled out my phone and recorded what he was saying. Yeah, I know it was a bit muffled by the door, so Amy's replies were harder to hear, but Elijah's near shouting was easily picked up. The second I started listening to what he was saying, my stomach dropped. He was telling her that she had to pull herself together because she could not say a word about what had happened between them. Amy said that nothing had happened between them, that he had been the one only to do something, that she told him to stop and he didn't listen. He told her to shut up and make sure that no one finds out about anything, because if she told anyone he would do it again, and this time he would make sure it hurt. She told him that she would not say a word, and he said a little more, the details of which I will not be including here, guys. However, I knew without a shadow of a doubt that he had taken advantage of my daughter. So that's when I intervened, calling out Amy's name from the door to the pool house to make them think that I had not overheard anything. She called back immediately and emerged shortly after, clearly shaken but physically unharmed. So I took her to the car immediately, telling her that we were leaving and not leaving any space for complaints, though she just followed me silently. When we got home, I sat her down and told her what I heard and that the only reason I did not intervene was so I could record the conversation so there would be proof. Amy broke down. She told me everything that happened, what Elijah had done, and what he had threatened to do if she told anyone. She told me that he said that William would be able to get him out of any trouble that she could get him into by ratting him out. But who would even believe her anyways? I sat with her for a very long time. I told her that I would make sure that Elijah faced the consequences of what he's done. We're waiting for Bruce right now, and guys, we will discuss the next steps with him, but we're going to take action as soon as possible. Update number 4. Given where I left last update, I'm going to get right into it. Amy, Bruce, and I went to the police first thing in the morning after consulting our lawyer to lodge an official report. I submitted the recordings into evidence, and after some questions, Bruce took Amy back to his place while I, along with the cops, headed to Ava's house. The cops approached the house while I waited outside, and Ava was the one who answered the door, and the cops instructed her to bring Elijah out here now. There, Elijah was arrested for abuse of a minor and for making threats of bodily harm. Both he and Ava were protesting right up until the cops stated the charges against him, after which Elijah just froze while Ava started panicking about what they just said. She continued to deny it right up until I approached after getting the approval of the officer standing with me. Upon seeing me, she became hysterical, asking me if this was some sort of joke to get back at her for what I thought she had done to my daughter. I apologized to her for accusing her of abusing Amy in front of our family and told her that I'd found out what really happened. She was not willing to accept anything I was saying at the time, and when the cops started to move towards Elijah, she focused her attention on them.
Instead of looking guilty or afraid or showing any ounce of remorse, when he finally started moving again, Elijah laughed. He looked the man who was reading his charges directly in the eye and laughed, and said it didn't matter what he was being charged with, his father would get him out of it for nothing. They immediately began escorting him to the police car, and Ava went with them, still protesting every step of the way while he just looked amused by the whole situation. So, before getting into the car, he looked at me. He smiled and said to give the rest of the family his regards, and I knew he meant Amy. I'll skip past the majority of the arrest and focus on what happened after. Ava only calmed down enough to actually hear me out at the station after William arrived. He'd gotten the earliest flight back from his business trip to be here for everything. There he was, able to calm her down enough for her to begin to understand what happened, what Elijah did. William explained that Bruce and I had called him last night and he advised us on what to do. Ava was so mad that William had not informed her first, but he told her that he could not risk her getting caught up in the emotions and telling him to protect Elijah. She argued and yelled and she cried, but at the end, after hearing the recording of Elijah threatening Amy, she started to understand. I wish I could have been there when Elijah found out that his father, whom he's been banking on to get him out of this, was rightfully siding with the victim. I wish I could have seen the look on his face, but the officer at the station assured me that he looked like he'd seen a ghost with how pale he got. The official processes are still ongoing, but considering the recording and Amy's testimony and the fact that his own father is siding against him, it's entirely likely that Elijah will be facing justice for what he's done. I'll do my best to shield Amy from this in any way that I can. I've already failed her once, and I will not allow it to happen again. But she's a strong girl, and I know she'll make it through this. Your words and comments on my original post and all of the updates have meant more to me this time than you can have ever imagined. And all I can say is thank you. Hopefully, all this will be over very soon, and my daughter will be able to go on and live life like an amazing free of all this trauma. Final update. Hey guys, my last update was the conclusion to this horrible story. While I wish that everything happened was nothing more than a story, I could tuck away into a faraway corner of the internet, isn't it? Life went on and the story continued on its own. Consider this an epilogue for this chapter of our lives that both Amy and I are relieved to be putting behind us. To start off with the most pertinent topic, Elijah. He's in prison. He'll be there for a long time, and for anonymous's sake, I'll refrain from sharing any of the specifics, but after the criminal suit was handled, William supported Bruce and me in raising a civil suit against Elijah for what he did. Both he and Ava, once she came around, felt it was important for Elijah to have to compensate Amy for what he did. So guys, this brings us up to the next topic, Ava. Though she was initially unwilling to even listen to the words I said, she did come around. I understand where she was coming from. I mean, it was her only child who was being charged, you know. But I also was not willing to compromise in any sort of way. Since then, both she and William have been intensely remorseful about what happened underneath their own roof. Yeah. Well, they both wished that they would have caught on sooner or that they would have been able to prevent it altogether. As it is, they've pledged to do anything they can to atone for Elijah's crimes. Amy's all right. She's counseling and she's healing for her privacy. I'll leave it at that, and I'm just grateful now that everything is officially finally over. Well, we get to put this all behind us, and I'm glad that my daughter is just finally okay. And more than anything, I'm glad that the man who harmed her is going to live a very miserable life behind bars, paying for his crimes.
Alright guys, this was one of the most despicable, disgusting stories that I've read in quite some time. You see a lot of these type of stories, narrating these, but this one was just another level. I mean, besides the point that Elijah abused somebody, he abused a minor, and he was so okay with that, just mocking the cops, saying, you know what, my daddy will get me out of this one. Well, you know what, Elijah, your dad is not getting you out of this one, and you're going to go to prison, and that's where you belong. I want to know what you guys think about this story. Drop it down below and just let me know your insights on it. Frankly, I was disgusted and appalled, and the only reason I decided to narrate this story is just to put it in the open about how oblivious some people can be. Like, what I'm trying to say is OP's daughter, she wasn't showing any signs of what happened to her, and this would have continued to keep happening if OP did not overhear the conversation in the pool house. Anyways, guys, disgusting person Elijah, you deserve to be in jail, and I hope you see this video. Anyways, guys, have a great day. It's cool to be kind. Life is short, and you never know what people are going through, so just try to be kind to someone. Have a great day.